Okay, in the last part of section 9.1 here, we're going to talk about finding even and odd roots. So we've talked about square roots and we've talked about cube roots, but I want you to understand that our roots can go on forever. We can take square roots and cube roots and fourth roots and fifth roots and so on and so forth. We can just keep going. But it's really important to remember that you can only take an even root of positive numbers. But if it's an odd root, it's okay if it's positive or negative. Okay, so even roots, you can only take even roots of positive numbers, but you can take odd roots of positive or negative depending on what your situation is. And you're going to be using your calculator on these, so you're just going to figure out what is the fourth root of 2,401. Now, if you're not sure about how to do this on your calculator, you're looking for a button that looks like this, probably X root or something like that. And in order to use it, you would type in 4, and then you would type in this X root button, and then you would type in 2401, and then either your equals or your enter button. And when you type in the fourth root of 2,401, you get 7. Similarly, if you're going to do the fifth root of negative 243, what would you get? It's negative 3. Okay. How about the third root of 0.064, which is 64 thousandths? Remember, it starts as a decimal, so I want you to go ahead and write your answer as a decimal. And then if you're going to take the sixth root of negative 729, what happens there? Well, you get an error because, as we just said, you can only take an even root of positive numbers, so this is not a real number. Okay, so only even roots can only be of positive numbers. Okay, so when we're simplifying these expressions, if we're taking the nth root of a to the n, if it's even, we got to add those absolute value bars. But if it's odd, we do not. Okay, so that's, remember, because you can only take the even root of a positive number, so we're adding in those absolute values to make sure it stays positive. Okay. So fourth root of 3x minus 1 to the fourth, it's an even root, so I need to add the absolute values and say that's 3x minus 1 absolute value. Okay. Fifth root of negative 9 to the fifth, well, that's just negative 9. It's okay for that to be negative. Third root of x minus 6 to the third, that's just x minus 6. I don't need absolute values because it's an odd root, so I don't need to ensure that it stays positive. The eighth root of negative 0.7 to the eighth, well, that's the absolute value of negative 0.7, which is just 0.7. Okay. We're forcing it to be positive because it's an even root. Okay. Square root of 4x squared plus 12x plus 9, I'm going to go ahead and factor that into 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3, which is 2x plus 3 squared. So when I take the square root, now normally we don't put a 2 out here for a square root. We just, normally it'll just look like this without the 2. But then square root of 2x plus 3 squared, it is an even root, so I'm going to have to put in the absolute values, which is absolute value of 2x plus 3. And this last one, I changed it because I needed it to be a squared. The square root of 100x squared, that's the absolute value of 10x. And you could leave it like this, but the 10 is obviously already positive, so 10 times the absolute value of x. I would take either of those. I'm not going to be super particular. Some might be, but not me. Okay? So remember, if it's an even root, you have to add those absolute value bars to make sure it stays positive. And if it's an odd root, it's okay if it's positive or negative. Okay, that's the last section from our last video for section 9.1. We'll see you in the next section. Keep up the good work.